Oh, they'll never count sheep again.
Listen, why don't you come work for me?
What do you have in mind?
Something you were born to do.
Welcome to Room 9.
Looking good, number 9, looking good.
Where's your dignity?
19 months before 9/11. In his 2000 book, The America We Deserve, Trump wrote, "I really am convinced we're in danger of the sort of terrorist attacks that will make the bombing of the 1993 Trade Center look like little kids playing with firecrackers." Trump also mentioned the mastermind of the attack, writing, quote, "One day, we're told that a shadowy figure with no fixed address named Osama bin Laden is public enemy number one, and U.S. jet fighters lay waste to his camp in Afghanistan. He escapes back under some rock, and a few news cycles later, it's on to a new enemy and a new crisis."
You look at Larry Silverstein, who's a terrific owner in New York and a very good friend of mine who I just called. I was very worried about him because I assumed maybe he was in the building. He took possession of the building 1 week ago. As you know, he just bought the World Trade Center.
Right.
And he was in his office, and he was getting ready to move into the World Trade Center over the next 2 weeks. So when I just spoke to him...
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
The developer is actually a friend of mine, but he didn't want to build this building either. If you look back at the records, I mean, when it was first foisted upon him, Larry Silverstein is a great guy. He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine, but he didn't want to build this pile of junk. And
earlier, he said Muslims in New Jersey celebrated as the towers burned.
When the World Trade Center came tumbling down, and I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering.
He says he saw it on television, but no video has ever surfaced. Jersey City officials say it never happened, but Trump says others saw it as well.
I start getting phone calls in my office by the hundreds that they were there and they saw this take place.
The men who were detained due to the report they were taping the first plane crash and then celebrating and joking about it actually went on television and admitted it was their job to record the attack.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
We went after Iraq. They did not knock down the World Trade Center, okay? It wasn't the Iraqis that knocked down the World Trade Center. We went after Iraq. We decimated the country. Iran's taken over, okay. But it wasn't the Iraqis. You will find out who really knocked down the World Trade Center because they have papers in there that are very secret. You may find it's the Saudis, okay? But you will find out.
I think what I want to do is I want to talk just for a second. I wrote this out, and it's very close to my heart because I was down there, and I watch our police and our firemen down on 7-Eleven, down at the World Trade Center right after it came down, and I saw the greatest people I've ever seen in action.
Well, it was an architectural defect. You know, the World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation, and it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid, and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
A lot of people ask, how is it possible that a Boeing plane would be able to destroy or two planes would be able to destroy the Twin Towers? Because they were constructed to withstand like a 707 attack.
Well, it's tremendous power and tremendous heat, and people were willing to die, and when they're willing to die and when they're willing to become kamikazes of a sense, there's very little you can do about it. I mean, the heat and the power, actually it was amazing that the initial jolts didn't jar the building as much as people would have thought, but the tremendous amounts of fuel that was dumped on the building and 1,600 degrees temperature, I guess that's probably more than anything could take, no matter what. I have a lot of property down there, but it was unfortunately affected by what happened to the World Trade Center.
The member of Congress who represents the ground where the World Trade Center once stood is calling on Donald Trump to return $150,000 of federal funds that Donald Trump applied for and received from the World Trade Center Business Recovery Grant Program designed to help small businesses in that area. In an open letter to Donald Trump, Congressman Jerry Nadler wrote, "You claim to be one of the biggest, richest, most successful developers in the city, yet you took taxpayer money from a grant program designed to help the little guys. Whatever the size of your business, we need no further proof that you are a small man."
Looking good, number 9, looking good.
Where's your dignity?